Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're gonna dive into something a little unsettling, I guess you could say. Black psychology.
Yeah.
Now, before you go picturing like shadowy figures and mind control and all that, let me assure you, it's a bit more subtle.
Right. It's definitely not about controlling minds like
Yeah.
you see in the movies.
Right.
Black psychology, as it's kind of presented in our source material today, is more about using psychological knowledge for, manipulation.
Yeah.
Getting people to do what you want, maybe, without them even realizing it.
Yeah, and what makes this even more interesting is the source we're looking at. We've got a book review here from an Arabic website, Huye 124, which translates to Maktabat Tafa 2024. The book itself is Sena PDF, which is the Book of Black Psychology PDF,
Okay.
written by Dr. Mohammed Abdel Al.
It's interesting, isn't it? We have this seemingly academic book
Yeah.
about the kind of darker side of psychology, and yet the website is presenting it in a very approachable, almost promotional way. They even provide links to download the PDF.
It's almost as if they're saying, hey, here's this powerful knowledge, come and get it, you know? But what's interesting is the source describes Black psychology as, really using psychological knowledge with like malicious intent.
Yeah.
Like manipulating people without their knowledge. And that's a pretty heavy concept.
It is. Think about it as like exploiting those little vulnerabilities we all have, like our fears,
Yeah.
our desires, our need for approval, whatever it is. The source mentions techniques like suggestion, persuasion, emotional control.
Yeah.
In the right hands, those can be powerful tools. You think about therapy, marketing, things like that.
Yeah.
But when they're used for this Black psychology, the goal is to really control and manipulate, often for personal gain.
So is it like a salesperson playing on your fear of missing out to like pressure you into a purchase or that friend who always guilt trips you into doing what they want?
Exactly. Exactly. It's about pushing those buttons that we all have to get someone to behave in a certain way. And here's where it gets really interesting for you. The source claims that these tactics are used everywhere. It's not just in some spy movie.
Yeah, right.
So you start to wonder, wait, is this happening to me?
You start thinking about it, all those times you felt pressured or unsure or wondering if somebody was pulling the strings. And what's even more unsettling is the source mentions that this book teaches you how to protect yourself from this manipulation. It's like a self-defense guide for your mind.
It does kind of raise questions about the purpose of this book.
Yeah.
Is it meant to empower people to defend themselves or to become manipulators? It's it's a bit of a double-edged sword there.
It definitely makes you think. So we know this Black psychology uses these psychological techniques for manipulation, and the source says it's all around us. But how does it actually work? What are some of the techniques, the specific techniques?
Let's dive into that. So the source specifically mentions exploiting psychological weaknesses, like fear and greed. We see this all the time. Think about those fear-mongering ads.
Yeah.
Is your home safe? Protect yourself with this.
Right.
It plays on that innate fear of the unknown. So we just kind of react. We don't think.
And greed, that's like all those get-rich-quick schemes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They dangle that promise of easy money, and it's like they're exploiting that desire for wealth, playing on those hopes and dreams of a better life.
Absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be about money. It could be greed for power, recognition, even love. The manipulator figures out what you crave and uses that as leverage.
Wow, this is getting pretty intense.
Yeah.
I feel like we're only scratching the surface here.
We are. And the source mentions other techniques too, like suggestion, persuasion, emotional control. These are often more subtle, but incredibly effective.
Okay, so break those down for me. What's the difference between suggestion and persuasion?
Okay.
Aren't they kind of the same thing?
They are similar, but there's a subtle distinction.
Okay.
So suggestion is more about planting an idea in someone's mind, hoping it takes root. Think of it like a friend who constantly mentions a new restaurant, subtly nudging you towards trying it.
Okay.
Persuasion is a little bit more direct. It's about presenting arguments and evidence to convince you of a particular viewpoint or action.
So suggestion is like dropping hints.
Yeah.
And persuasion's like building a case.
Precisely. So let's say someone wants you to invest in their new business venture.
Yeah.
A manipulator might use suggestion to create doubt about your current investments,
Okay.
while simultaneously using persuasion to highlight the amazing returns their venture offers.
Right, right.
And then there's emotional control, which can be one of the most powerful tools.
Emotional control. What does that look like in practice?
So imagine someone showering you with affection and attention to gain your trust.
Right.
It's often called love bombing.
Okay.
Or perhaps they play the victim, triggering feelings of guilt and sympathy to get their way.
Yeah.
They could even try to make you angry, knowing you're more likely to make, impulsive decisions when you're emotional.
Wow. I'm starting to see how all of these techniques can be combined to create such a powerful form of manipulation. It's kind of scary to think about.
It can be, but remember, awareness is key. The more you understand these tactics, the less likely you are to fall prey to them. That's really the whole point of doing this deep dive. We're giving you that knowledge to be able to spot and understand these tactics.
Absolutely. But before we jump into self-defense strategies and all that, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. We've talked about the techniques.
Yeah.
But what are the real-world implications of this black psychology? What kind of harm can it actually cause?
That's a crucial question. And I think the source itself offers a pretty compelling real-world example, the website we're looking at right now.
Okay.
The way this book is presented with its catchy title, these easy download links, The Promises of Power and Control, that can be seen as an example of black psychology in action.
Hold on. So you're saying the website itself?
It's something to consider.
I'd be trying to manipulate us.
The way the book is framed could be seen as appealing to our own desires for influence, tapping into that same greed and desire for control that we just discussed.
Right.
It's like they're using the very techniques they're describing to entice us to download the book.
That's unsettling. And if that's happening right here on this seemingly harmless website, then, what about everywhere else? Our workplaces, relationships, even our social media feeds?
Exactly. And the potential harm can be significant. Think about it. Black psychology can erode trust, damage relationships, even lead to exploitation.
Yeah.
It can be used to manipulate people into making decisions that aren't in their best interests, whether it's buying something they don't need, supporting a cause they don't understand, or even, getting involved in a harmful situation.
So basically, it can have a ripple effect, impacting not just the individual, but also their social circles and potentially even society as a whole. It's almost like a virus spreading through our interactions.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And just like with a virus, awareness is our best defense.
Yeah.
The more we understand how these manipulative tactics work, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves and those around us.
Which brings us to the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Self-protection and critical thinking.
Okay.
The source mentions that the book provides tips on protecting yourself from these very manipulations. And I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Me too. And that's where we'll pick up in part 2 of this deep dive. Right. We'll explore those self-defense strategies in detail.
Yeah.
Along with how you can develop those critical thinking skills you need to kind of navigate this increasingly complex world.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Welcome back to the deep dive. Before we, dove into this world of black psychology, I never really realized how many ways people can be manipulated. It's a little unsettling, but also fascinating to see how these tactics play out in everyday life.
Yeah, it is. And it really highlights how important self-awareness is.
Yeah.
As we discussed, knowing these tactics exist, that's the first step.
Right.
But now we need to figure out how to protect ourselves.
Right.
And thankfully, our source mentions that the book offers tips on exactly that, defending yourself from psychological manipulation.
Okay, I'm all ears. Knowing about these tactics is one thing, but actually, defending yourself against them feels like a whole other challenge.
It is.
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think, as we touched upon earlier, that the foundation of self-protection really is awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing that these manipulative tactics exist. It's like knowing the rules of the game. You can't play effectively if you don't understand the moves.
So step 1, recognize that these manipulative tactics are out there.
Right.
Check. What's the next move in this game of mental chess?
Well, the next step is all about knowing yourself, building that self-awareness. It's like understanding your strengths and weaknesses in a game. What are your fears, your insecurities, your deepest desires?
Right.
The more you understand your own psychological makeup, the better equipped you'll be to recognize when someone might be trying to exploit those vulnerabilities.
Okay, so it's like figuring out your own personal tells, like those little giveaways that a poker player might
Yeah.
unconsciously reveal.
Right.
But how do we actually do that? It's not like we walk around with a list of our deepest fears and insecurities taped to our foreheads.
True. It does take some introspection, some honest reflection. Think about those times you felt manipulated or pressured in the past. What were the circumstances? What tactics were used? By analyzing those situations, you can start to identify those patterns in your own responses,
Right.
those triggers that make you vulnerable to certain types of manipulation.
That makes sense. It's almost like studying your own game film, looking for those repeated mistakes or
Yeah.
vulnerabilities that someone could exploit. By recognizing those patterns, we can learn to anticipate those moves in the future.
Right.
But what about those situations where someone throws a curveball? What if we encounter a technique that we've never even seen before?
That's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
It's about constantly questioning information, not taking everything at face value, and always considering the source's motivations.
Yeah.
It's like being a good detective, looking for inconsistencies, hidden agendas, and clues that might reveal the truth.
So it's not just about blindly accepting what we're told, but taking a step back and asking, why are they telling me this? Or what's their angle?
Yeah.
It's about being a bit more skeptical, especially when someone is trying to persuade us to do something.
Exactly. It's not about being cynical or distrusting everyone, but being like a discerning consumer of information.
Yeah.
Think about those too good to be true offers.
Oh, yeah.
Our gut often screams scam,
Right.
but sometimes we let those persuasive tactics override our intuition.
It's like those emails promising you $1 million if you just send your bank details. We know it's a trick.
Right.
But those scams still work because they exploit that desire for easy money.
Exactly.
And it's not just about individual manipulators, right?
Yeah.
It feels like our entire digital world is designed to influence us, like social media algorithms, targeted advertising, even the news we consume.
Right.
It's all designed to shape our thoughts and behaviors.
It is.
And we're constantly bombarded with these messages, and many of them, I feel like, are designed to manipulate us in some way.
Right.
It's almost like being in a constant tug of war with these systems, just trying to hold on to our own thoughts and opinions.
Right.
So critical thinking becomes even more important. It's like building up our mental muscle so we can resist that pull.
That's a great way to put it. And this is where a healthy dose of skepticism, particularly online, becomes crucial. Think about the source we're discussing.
Okay.
This book promoting potentially manipulative techniques.
Right.
The fact that it's readily available online raises a question. Who is the intended audience?
Yeah, that's a great point. Why is this information so easily accessible?
Right.
And what does that say about the potential for misuse?
Exactly. It really highlights the need for caution when navigating the internet. Things aren't always what they seem. There are people out there who might be trying to take advantage of our vulnerabilities for their own gain. We need to be aware of those potential pitfalls.
So we've got self-awareness, critical thinking, and online skepticism.
Right.
Those are some powerful tools. Are there any other strategies our source mentions for building up those mental defenses?
While the source doesn't go into further detail, there are definitely other tools we can add to our arsenal. For example, setting boundaries is essential.
Okay.
This means learning to say no to requests or demands that make you feel uncomfortable, even if the person seems friendly or persuasive.
That's a tough one for a lot of people, myself included. We want to be liked, to be helpful.
Right.
So we end up saying yes to things we really don't want to do.
Right.
But I can see how that plays right into the hands of a manipulator.
Absolutely. It takes practice, but learning to set clear boundaries is crucial for protecting yourself from those who might try to take advantage of your good nature. Another powerful tool is trusting your gut. If something feels off about a person or situation, even if you can't explain why, pay attention to that feeling.
Yeah.
Your intuition is often picking up on subtle cues that your conscious mind hasn't processed yet.
It's like that saying, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. But instead of ducks, we're talking about manipulators.
Exactly. Those gut feelings are often warning signs. Don't ignore them.
Right.
They could be trying to protect you from something harmful.
So we've got a pretty solid toolkit for self-protection now. Self-awareness, critical thinking, healthy skepticism, setting boundaries, and trusting our intuition. it feels like we're building up a pretty strong mental fortress.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't about becoming paranoid or seeing a manipulator behind every corner.
Right.
It's about empowering yourself, making informed choices, and protecting your own well-being.
It's about understanding the game, recognizing the players, and then using our knowledge and skills to play strategically.
I like that analogy. It's about being an active participant in our own lives
Hmm.
rather than letting others dictate our thoughts and actions. And it brings
Yeah.
us back to the book itself. While it might offer valuable insights into self-protection, the fact that it details these manipulative techniques raises some important questions.
Right. What happens if this knowledge falls into the wrong hands?
Yeah.
It's like giving someone the keys to the mental fortress we've been working so hard to build.
Precisely. And that brings us to a critical question. Is the accessibility of this information, the fact that it's readily available online, a cause for concern?
That's a big question, and one that we'll continue to explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve deeper into those considerations, the potential risks of widespread access to this knowledge, and what it means for all of us as we navigate a world where manipulation is becoming increasingly sophisticated. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent this episode exploring the world of Black psychology, uncovering these manipulative tactics that are, designed to influence us without us even realizing it. And it's been a journey, understanding the techniques, recognizing the potential for harm, and even equipping ourselves with strategies for self-protection.
It has been quite a journey, hasn't it? And I think it's safe to say that we've all learned a great deal about the subtle and often unseen ways that psychology can be used for both good and, well, less than noble purposes.
Absolutely. And it brings us back to that crucial question we kind of posed before. Is the accessibility of this information, the fact that a book detailing these manipulative techniques is readily available online, is that a cause for concern?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. On the one hand, making this knowledge available could empower individuals to recognize and defend themselves against manipulation. But on the other hand, it also provides a sort of playbook for those who might want to use these techniques for personal gain or even to harm others.
Yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Like giving someone a powerful tool without any instructions on how to use it responsibly.
Right.
We wouldn't just hand a scalpel to somebody with like no medical training, right?
Yeah.
So how do we ensure that this psychological knowledge, I guess, is used ethically and responsibly?
That's a complex question, and unfortunately, there are no easy answers. It's a challenge we face in many areas of life, particularly in the digital age where information spreads so rapidly and widely. We see it with technology, scientific advancements. I mean, the potential for both good and harm exists in almost every field.
Yeah, it's like that saying, knowledge is power, but it's also a responsibility.
Right.
And with something as powerful as psychological knowledge, I mean, the stakes are incredibly high.
Absolutely. It raises challenging questions about education, ethics, even the nature of knowledge itself.
Yeah.
Should there be limits on who has access to certain types of information? Can we effectively regulate the spread of potentially harmful knowledge? I mean, these are questions that philosophers and ethicists have been grappling with for centuries.
Yeah.
And they're only becoming more urgent in our interconnected world.
Right. But while those broader societal discussions are essential, I think there's also something we can do, on an individual level to address these concerns.
I agree. And I think it circles back to those self-protection strategies we discussed earlier. It all starts with awareness, with recognizing that manipulation exists and that it can take many forms.
Yeah, it's about becoming more conscious consumers of information.
Yeah.
Questioning what we see and hear and being mindful of the motives behind the messages we encounter.
Exactly. And it's also about fostering critical thinking skills, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. We can help our friends, families, and communities become more discerning, more resistant to manipulation, and more empowered to make informed choices.
It's like building a collective shield against those who would seek to exploit us, creating a culture of awareness and critical thinking where manipulation is less likely to thrive.
I love that analogy. And ultimately, I believe that knowledge, even knowledge about the darker aspects of human behavior, can be a force for good.
I agree. It allows us to see the world more clearly, to understand the complexities of human interaction, and to make more conscious choices. It's like shining a light into those dark corners, exposing those hidden mechanisms so we can navigate the world with more confidence and awareness.
Beautifully put. And I